Hi, this is John Van Lunen, and you are listening to Treasures of the Outer Banks. In this podcast, we talk to people who live on the Outer Banks, and through their stories, we'll explore what makes this place so special. So if you downloaded this podcast to find out where the gold is hidden, my apologies. But if you want to meet the people we treasure on this sandbar, stick around. I'm sure you'll enjoy their stories of history, local personalities, and community. Today we have a special guest. Daryl Law and I go way back to the summer of 1994 when we both worked at a water sports business in Duck. He started coming here as a child and has since held several jobs on the Outer Banks, allowing him to meet a wide range of people. He's currently a manager at Jeanette's Pier, where he gets a front row seat to the Atlantic Ocean on a daily basis. In this podcast, Daryl tells some great stories about the people he's met and the things he's done on the Outer Banks. Stick around and listen in. All right, Daryl. I got Daryl Law with me. Thanks for coming out here, Daryl.
Hey, great to see you today.
Awesome. So Daryl and I go way back to, the early 90s, and we started working together back then. And he grew up in Charlottesville, and I also lived in Charlottesville briefly, so we kind of had a little connection there. And I know that your family started coming down here a long time ago. What time was that?
They made an investment in a piece of property in the late 50s, early 60s, and subsequently my uncle built a cottage there. So my first memories of coming down with my family and everything, probably 65, 68, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what was it like coming down on vacation? What were you doing around 1970, 75?
Oh, man, we loved it. We called it going to the beach. We just absolutely loved it. It would be my sisters and I, along with my first cousins and their mom and my mom, and we would come down for the week, and the dads would join us when they finished the work week, and they would come down later. But we would spend a lot of the bungalow was on East Durham Street in Avalon subdivision of Kill Devil Hills, so we spent a lot of time at Avalon Fishing Pier, and the little market across the street was somewhere we were actually allowed to walk to, which
Right.
was a big deal. And your dad would give you a quarter, and you could go up there and spend it.
It's quite a budget.
Yeah, and one of our favorite things, besides Zero bars, I don't know if you've had a Zero bar, they're pretty tasty, but were these balsa wood airplanes. And the whole first in flight thing is pretty neat, because the monument's really not that far from the Wright Brothers Memorial Monument's really not that far from the bungalow. And anyway, we would go up there and get these balsa wood planes and walk them back to the house, and these little kits that make these little teeny balsa wood planes. We'd put them together and throw them around, and we'd go back in the dunes and play with the little Matchbox cars or whatever. But the frogs or toads would always migrate to the outdoor shower area. The concrete was a cool, damp place, and
Right.
and we would catch them and put them in our sand pails. And
Right.
yeah, but
That was the big entertainment.
that was, and along the same lines, we would take the pails down, the plastic pails down to the beach at Fifth Street, and of course we had to bring the sand fleas back after we dug them up. So we put them in the bucket and bring them back,
Right.
and we'd have them all week. And the parents were like, you can't take those, can't take that home, because we want to load it back in the wagon and drive
Right.
back. But there were great days. We used to go, I think I mentioned the other day, we used to go down to Forbes Candy. That was one of the biggest highlights of the trip. And then, Dad would buy you one, type of candy. And for me, it was that rock candy that they,
Pure sugar.
yes, form on the little string. And I would get the clear one or the brown sugar one. Oh, man, that stuff was good. And then they would typically splurge for a box of saltwater taffy. So that was one of our big outings during the week. And try to make that last all week long, But
So fast forward a couple years.
sure.
I mean, this was an annual thing, right?
Oh yeah. Once we owned the cot, yes, because
You never missed a summer, more or less.
No, so to make it all work, they rented it out. It was in a rental program, and they would block out July 4th week. So that's when I was coming and making these memories with my cousins. But spring and fall, people didn't understand that the shoulder season was good back then. They just didn't come. It was Memorial Day to Labor Day, so we got to come in the spring, and a lot of times that was put the tar on the roof or replace the screens,
Right.
or some painting.
Right.
And then the fall is more let's enjoy. fall is beautiful here. It always has been. We would do a lot of walking on the beach. And one night, my cousins and I found a little piece of plywood. It was literally, I think, like a shutter had blown off of one of the old motels in that stretch there near the Sea Ranch. And I swear it was pushing midnight. It was about a full moon. And we decided to learn how to skimboard right then and there. And we took this dilapidated piece of plywood and threw it down in the swash, ran and jumped on it, and yeah, it worked. And we were in our blue jeans, Levi's blue jeans,
Of course.
you know. So it was a lot of cool things. You know, we always flew American flag on the cottage, and you know, taking an outdoor shower was a big novelty. You know,
Yeah, really.
we didn't have a screen around it, so you kept your trunks on, and you know, there weren't really places to go to eat. So you know, we were, you know, stay pretty close to the house.
Sure.
A lot of times we would walk over to the other side of the island. So you would cross over and go down West Durham and get on Bay Drive, which is Bayview Drive, you know, technically, and you walk down to Holiday Marina, and which later really gained fame when it was Soundside Restaurant and Bar, or what was that called, like a folk ale house or something.
Right. I read about that a little bit.
Yeah. We would go there and watch the sunset, and we even went fishing there. We gathered clams there at times, but Dad every once in a while would rent us a Surrey bicycle, which was a four-wheeled Surrey, and we would ride around on the roads were all concrete back then. I don't know how many people remember that, but they were literally concrete slabs.
Funny.
They weren't very wide.
And was this on the beach road or Durham, or like on the back
No,
streets?
this is on the side streets.
Yeah.
I don't really, honestly, cannot remember right off what the main roads were. But if you go down into some of the sleepier parts, I think it's Dock Street in Avalon, it's still got the concrete.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah.
And so fast forward a little bit, you,
Uh-huh.
you go to college, and
Yeah.
somewhere in between college or right after college, you decide to move down to the Outer Banks.
I did. I actually moved here before, during, and after college.
Gotcha.
I really saw myself becoming a carpenter. I worked that first year. We also were framing a house up in Duck that summer, so I bounced back and forth. And
what was Duck like back then?
nothing. No.
There's nothing there.
I mean, nothing. There was a bell, a huge church bell across the street from the church. I mean, there was nothing. There was no Winks. There was literally nothing there. The
Was the
Scarborough
campground
Lane.
still in
Yeah, the
existence?
campground was there. That was a big part of my life that first summer or two. So I, at the Golden Strands, got hooked up with carpentry crew, Joe Finn, and he was. His girlfriend was Debbie Scarborough of Scarborough Lane. That's her parents there on the right-hand side when you pass the Greenleaf
Right.
Gallery. And the end of their street was the campground. And so when I came back from Christmas that year, I went to work for him, with Joe. And so I was going up there all the time because that's where he lived and stuff. And, you know, I was 18. I had my driver's license in my pocket, but I did not have a car. So all of this was done on the fly with a tool belt and my lunch Playmate cooler I had for my lunch. And
Usually catching rides with the rest of the crew.
I was thumbing, and then yes,
Yeah.
there was a mix.
Yeah.
Typically, the ride home was with the crew, but getting there on time and with all your stuff was on you. And back then, people hitchhiked all the time. That was no big deal. So yeah, we ended up. Getting a job building what turned out to be the very first rental houses up in Corolla. We subsequently after this did build some in Sandling. Sandling was the final frontier. That same winter, we actually January 2nd of that year we started one. I think it was they were all done at phase 5 at Sandling or something like that. And oh gosh, I'll never forget. All of us had at least one dog. So we had like this crew of like 6 guys, 7 guys, 8 guys, depending on how many showed up. And Joe had like 3 dogs, and it was crazy. There was all these ponds there, and they would actually duck hunt in the morning before we started working. And so at the job site, it wasn't uncommon because the Canada geese would fly over as well. honestly, this is going to sound crazy in this day and age, but it wasn't uncommon for there to be shotguns leaned up in the corners of the house we were framing while we were working. And so the dogs are down, pack of 10 dogs underneath. We're up there, got the noisy radio on, and you're oceanfront. I mean, I thought it was great, dude. I was like, yeah, I made it. But, that one year it had snowed, and, I was the lowest guy on the totem pole, and, we get there and the plywood's covered in snow, and I'm trying to knock the snow off, and I carry the first sheet over, and they want to know why I'm not carrying 2 sheets. And, I was pretty physically fit at that point, and but you're walking through the sand, and it's cold out, and put bundle up a lot of clothes, it restricts your movement. Anyway.
So when you were working up there, was there still a gate up by the sand?
There was, yes. Thank you for bringing me back on track. I was going to go there. So after we did the handful of houses there in Sanderling, we landed this house up in Corolla proper. It was on Coral, which was the first right past Winks. Well, Winks wasn't there. There was a guard gate on the county line. So when you're driving north, you go through Sanderling, and there's that last S turn right there. You had to stop, and you had to prove you had business up there, or you couldn't go up. You just couldn't go up there. And so, we got the house started. I'll never forget, they brought all the lumber package down from Norfolk, I think it was called A&B lumber. And it was like in a box truck, man. And they backed it up, and the floor was huge tongue and groove timbers. And it was very interesting. And it was in the woods. I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nowhere.
You had to pack your own lunch, didn't you?
Yes. So Norris Austin had the post office. He was a postmaster. And at his place, you could get a Stewart sandwich, which is wrapped in plastic, okay? You could get a Coke. You could get Marlboro Reds. You could get Newport menthol cigarettes. I think you could get like a Snickers, maybe some Nabs. And I had some.
Where was this at?
I think it's behind where the post office is now.
Okay.
I believe. I'm not sure if it's still there.
And this was the post office selling these?
Yeah. The sundries. Yep. So it was great. So eventually I moved in to a hunting trailer there with Butch, my buddy Butch Graves. He was on the job crew
in Corolla.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I bought a van from Debbie Scarborough's brother, who was Scarborough Garage. That was pretty well known around here at the time. And anyway, so I ended up bunking with Butch while we were building the house. And in the evenings, man, our entertainment was like, you could walk through the woods to the oceanfront. I mean, It was really neat. It was a special time. And I'll never forget, my P.O. box was Corolla number 6. So after I got this, I don't remember how my sister got a hold of it, but she had been in England and London at school, and she had written me a letter. And of course, I never went to check the mail. I was like, who's going to send me something? So I finally check it, and we get this letter from Denise, and she's coming down, and it says the next day she's going to be there. So Butch and I, hygiene wasn't really at the top of our list too much. So
Sure.
The trailer didn't really have running water. We had a rain barrel, and that's really all we needed. And we don't have to get to the nitty gritty, but so Butch and I went to the parts store to fix the commode situation, and the parts store was the Corova dump. So instead of leaving Corolla and heading south for Ace or Kellogg's or somewhere like that,
which didn't exist,
we drove north on the beach to the dump and got the hose clamps and garden hoses and everything we needed to do to pass.
And that
out.
was in Corova.
Yeah.
Wasn't that part of that ranch?
Ernie's might have been, yeah. Ernie's, yeah. It might. You're talking about 1982, man. That's a lot of water under the bridge there, but there was huge dump up there that they've since cleaned up, and so that's where we went to get the parts.
I think there's still some remnants up there.
Yeah, Ernie's place got a little messy over the years.
Right.
He had 100-year lease, is what I heard.
Wow. And you say you were basically just picking for parts, basically.
Yeah, we were up there getting. Yeah, it was just open air. I mean, there was no fence, there was no signage. It just was there. So yeah, Butch helped me patch it up, and lo and behold, my sister did show up. And we had to put the plywood floor in the bathroom and reset the toilet and get the water running and stuff. But she did show up, and she loved it. We had a blast. Went on the beach, had a huge bonfire. There's no one. All there is the stars.
It was the wild, wild west. But it was in the east.
Wild, wild west. And I had grown up in suburbia.
Yeah.
And had been,
I'm glad you brought that up because I grew up in suburban, right outside of DC Beltway in Silver Spring, and we just don't walk out of our front door and see foxes, deer, and maybe a coyote. That's pretty crazy. Or we don't hike over to the beach and see dolphin. It just doesn't happen on a daily basis when you're in the suburbs. So when you come here, it's like, whoa.
It was really culture shock for me. I'll never forget. Butch was into hunting a little bit, and he had his shotgun, and that didn't last long. There's not the Kerala rabbits back then. They weren't real fat. There wasn't a whole lot of
pretty lean.
Yeah, you weren't gonna get much off of that. So there were a lot of hot dogs and bologna in our diet at the time, But we did build that house. We finished it. They went on to build some more. So yeah, that was my big time I spent up there. I ended up meeting some. A crew from JMU that next summer. I met a young lady down at the Sea Ranch, and they lived on West 3rd, and that's the year I learned how to surf there at the Sea Ranch, and sort of changed my direction a little bit, and then I went off to college. I went off to Guilford, and I did work here in the summers, and then I ended up coming back. I loved it so much, and came back, and I've been working in community newspapers the majority of the time, and along with the aquariums, I've done some public relations work for them, including Jeanette's Pier, where I work now.
Right. Well, let's transition over to your diving. I know you're a certified scuba diver and stuff like that, and maybe quickly tell me how you got in there, and then let's share some of the cool dives that you've done here.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And since I just mentioned the aquarium, I would have to say that I really honed my diving skills at the aquarium under the tutelage of Patrick Murphy, who really taught me how to be a good diver, and dove in the shark tank 121 times. And my partner was Mike Rumage, who's the director of Jeanette's Pier, where I work now. But that was at the end of my dive career. I haven't done much diving since then, but to get into it all, we took Randy Spears was the gentleman's name, and I took basic scuba. I think that was the summer of '83, and this guy Doug DeShields was my dive partner. He was a carpenter I worked for that summer. We were building one right up the road here on NC-12 in Southern Shores, and so we were gonna go. There's a Barrow pit that's full of water in Currituck, where a lot of the divers go for that first open water dive.
Right.
So after we did all our book work and all that stuff, we were diving in a pool at the Journey's End, which is where the restaurant is now. I'm drawing a blank. Michael's restaurant up
Tortugas
here.
Or Rundown?
Rundown. There was a motel there called Journey's Inn, and they had a pool. We did all our pool stuff there. So we're in a van, and we're heading over to Currituck, and we go past the Sea Ranch, or that area, general vicinity where the triangle wrecks are, and the instructors are like foaming at the mouth, and they like park the van, and they're like, hold on a second. They run over, and it's crystal clear conditions.
Right.
So we abort the trip to Currituck, where the safe dive was, and we go out in the ocean. So we drop down. It's in between 1st Street and 2nd Street. It's basically due east of the water tower in Gullible Hills.
Right.
So we get out there, and you're buddied up, and Doug was my buddy, and he'd already been there and stuff, snorkeling. And so we go out, and I've been waiting. I've been watching Jacques Cousteau all my life, and here I'm finally here, and
the big chance.
Man, I'm just like, I'm so pumped up, and I've got my dive knife on, and I've got my Tag Heuer watch my grandma had given me, and so we're dropping down to the bottom, and the first daggone thing I see is a Budweiser can rolling around in the sand.
Right.
And then there's like a pair of Fruit of the Loom underwear. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Pristine conditions.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a wonderful experience. I just really, got the bug that year. That wreck is, depending on the tide and where you are, what you're standing on. If you're standing on the bottom, it's like 20, 25 feet deep, maybe 30. But if you're standing on the rack at a low tide or something, it's you can almost stand on it and breathe air. So you know, it's not that deep on the higher structure, but it is a great beginning dive, and that's called a beach dive when you put your gear on the beach and walk out, swim out to the wreck, and the lifeguards or someone typically marks it during the summer.
Yeah, it is very popular amongst the locals. Even I know there's guys that'll spearfish it, throughout the summer just to catch some dinner.
They do. So then from there, we, my partner Doug, who unfortunately has passed away since that time, he turned the dive instructors on to what's known now as the Winks Wreck. And we went out there, and that was a beautiful dive. Oh my gosh, I had such a good time on that one. And I subsequently went back to, so that was a scuba dive, but then we subsequently went back and snorkeled it. And I tried pole spear fishing, which is Hawaiian sling, and I was chasing this bluefish. I shot him, man, but I bounced off of him. He's like looking at me like, yeah, that didn't hurt. So he's like swimming away from the wreck, and I'm just trying so hard. I mean, I could really hold my breath back then. I mean, I had done the competitive swimming, and I was pretty good at holding my breath. And I was chasing this fish, and sure enough, I did run out of air, and you just taught to look up, reach up, and I looked up, and I reached up, and there was a school of rays over my head.
Right.
And it was like carpet, man. There was like 30 of them in this huge diamond formation, and man, I wasn't about to surface through them, so I just, held my breath, and they finally passed, and I went up. But that was a cool wreck. I've only been out there a few times, and then I did do the Huron once. That's just north of Nags Head Pier. Yeah. There was a little tiny piece of a wreck just south of Avalon Pier, and my friend Big Bob Newman took me there. He kept laughing. He said, I always find cash on this wreck. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And sure enough, we get out there. There's a lot of, I think it's called eelgrass. There's all these grasses on it.
Yeah.
And, people coming out of the pier house with their change.
Right.
Their dollar bills would blow up, I guess. I mean, I don't know, but we did. Yeah. We found a couple dollar bills that day, which is kind of funny.
Does anybody dive down by off of Hatteras Island?
Oh yeah.
I mean, like right off the beach kind of thing.
Oh, I don't know if there's beach dive wrecks. I've never heard of. Oh well, there's the Boiler Wreck, which is across from the ranger station there at P Island area, where that restroom area is. There's a wreck there.
Okay.
I went fishing there. We were actually doing some collecting for the aquarium, and we were trying to get some sharks, and we put out the bait ball, and this dolphin fish came over immediately, and I had this little teeny trout rig on my little teeny trout rod, and I pitched it right to it, and man, he took it. We caught that thing. It was just so much fun.
You say dolphin? Is that
dolphin
mahi-mahi?
fish, mahi-mahi. Yeah. I had to just release it back, but
funny.
Yeah. So yeah, diving's been a big thing down here, and any day of summer where there's any viz at all, you can go by the Triangle Wrecks, and there'll be people out there, and it's actually fun to snorkel. Just snorkel.
I owning Kitty Hawk Water Sports, I occasionally get the call of, "Hey, is there a place that does snorkeling?" And I guess the short answer is not really.
Yeah.
Because you need. I guess most people want to do something like in the Keys where you're in 3 feet of water and just kind of putting around in real crystal clear water. But, we just don't have crystal clear 3 feet of water on a consistent basis,
We really don't. You just really have to have your gear ready, and you have to keep an eye on it. And you definitely need to go with someone. Don't, go alone. But there are some wrecks. There's up in Corolla, and there's my sister was just staying at the Croton Surf Club there, and there's a wreck right there. In fact, we were sitting up in the unit looking down, and there you can see a piece of a wreck right there, which that's what milepost probably 7 or something. The Croton Surf Club. It's where Quagmires Papagayos and was it Quagmires? Yeah, Quagmires was there. Speaking of Quagmires, did you ever get to go there?
I think I have been there.
Okay. I know you had mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the old haunts around the beach. That was one of the good ones. For me personally, that first summer down here, that first winter, 81, 82, that was the place to be on Sunday afternoon.
Is that right?
Papagayos, it was called.
Right.
And I think there was also one in Chapel Hill, Papagayos in Chapel Hill. But you know, it was margaritas by the pitcher and music, and that was the place to go.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I was, like I had mentioned, that's kind of the time period I started surfing a little bit, and I ended up getting up with some guys that were, you know, had from Elizabeth City that had been doing the surfing thing down here for a long time, and that was one of their rituals after having a good surf down near Nags Head Pier. We would all meet back up at Papagayo's and get the margaritas and get the burritos or you know, whatever, and it's just good memories.
Yeah, I know you mentioned this before to me, but you've moved down here 1 year, and your rent was just something crazy, like $50 a week or something like that.
Oh yeah, that was my first summer. Yeah, that was.
Was it $50 a week?
Yeah, yeah.
That's so funny.
So yeah,
You had your boombox and
I
your tool
did.
belt,
So,
and $50, and you were good to go.
for whatever reason, I was ready to leave Charlottesville when I turned 18, and I turned 18 into May and graduated the first week of June, and I had already lined up a job down here, and we went on beach from Charlottesville. We went on beach week to Virginia Beach and Sandbridge, and so during the middle of the week that I was on beach week, my friend Susie Krongard brought me down here, and I met with Craig Saunders, and we shook on it. So I went back home, and I made a little money working construction for my uncle, and my mom gave me a one-way ride down here. Paid that $50 for me at the Blue Box across from Atlantis. And that was it, man. I had the boom box, the skim board, the hammer, tape measure, some board shorts. I mean, jeez. Oh, fishing rod and tackle box. That was really it, man. I mean, I was.
You really didn't need much more than that.
No, he didn't. Yeah. And yeah, the whole Atlantis thing was. That was for a young man. You know, you only had to be 18 to drink beer back then,
Right.
and the whole Atlantis thing was pretty enticing, I'll say.
Gotcha.
So I think I did. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 31 nights in a row I went there.
Did you get an award for that?
No, but I fell asleep on the scaffolding on a Saturday morning at the duck house that we were building. And there weren't any guardrails. There's no safety rope when you fall asleep about 35 foot up on the pump jack scaffold board, and that was it. That was the last. I didn't go that night. So
Right.
Found some other entertainment.
Right.
So had a good time, but had too much of a good time maybe. And but yeah, Atlantis was the place to be. On Sundays they would have dime time. They would tap a keg of beer and have volleyball. On Sunday mornings early, man. It was crazy. And like I said, go to Papagayo's on Sunday evenings. But there was Foosball Palace. You know, if you wanted to play games, you could go over there and play pool or pinball.
Was that on the ocean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As part of the pier? Or?
Mm-hmm. No, it was immediately south of Nags Head Pier. There's 5 cottages that match there now, and that was the property.
Gotcha.
So, but the foosball and Atlantis were attached.
Gotcha.
And kind of wild times. And then there were quite a few characters living at the Blue Box, and I got to know them, like hang gliding instructors, and kind of surf bums, and
Right.
it was a wide variety of characters.
Awesome.
Some might have even called them scallywags. I'm not. But
There's still a few characters on this beach, I think.
yeah, there was. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Delbert. He was always a fixture at the surfing area. We were talking about the Triangle Wrecks. Right near there was the Sea Ranch, and basically where I learned how to surf. It used to be really good there that summer, the 82 summer. And Delbert was the king of the waves, man. You didn't want to get in his way. And he would just tell you straight up when you got there, if I drop in on one, I can't stop, and he would just run you over on this huge, ugly board that most people would have put in the barn,
Right.
But he was pretty cool. I got to know him over the years, and anyway, that was kind of the central part of my learning how to surf was right there at the Sea Ranch and the Triangle Wrecks. But and coincidentally, both our cottages that my parents owned were fairly close to that same general area.
Right. So you're pretty familiar with it.
Yeah.
So fast forward to more of your professional career. You did you worked in print media for quite a while.
I did.
I know you met a bunch of cool people there. I know Omi Tillett.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what you remember about Omi Tillett.
He is a pretty famous sea captain for the charter sport fishing industry, and I went on his boat as an observer. And when you're the photographer, reporter guy, it opens a lot of doors to going on adventures. And one day I got assigned to go out with him, and Jimmy Rule was his mate at the time, and unfortunately he's passed away as well. But and so is Omi, unfortunately. But we went to sea that day, and the men on board were treated to unbelievable fishing. Yeah. Unbelievable. For the people that hadn't been, you leave Oregon Inlet, you go, you steam like, I don't know, what is it, an hour and a half, 2 hours to the Gulf Stream, which is, I think it's about 40 miles. So you steam out, and they're looking at the temperature change, and when the temperature does change, there's typically a little grass line of sargasso weed and whatnot. There's a debris, a lot of times there's debris, lumber or cooler or something, and the fish gather under that. That's where the whole food chain starts. So yeah, Omi had them. Oh my gosh, we had filled up the fish box. I swear, I think it was by like 8 a.m. I mean, we had done the damage on, nice. They were big eye tuna because it was early spring. And in fact, I distinctly remember they had a 55-gallon gray plastic trash can that you would use around the docks and stuff on board, and they put the fish nose first down in that thing and iced around it, so it's just his tail was hanging out of the top. Right? It was a big fish. Man. And yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but it seems like the crew was from the coast in Virginia, and they maybe owned a restaurant or had seafood outlets or something. So after we caught all that fish, I'm pretty sure Captain Omi took us off the fish. I think he decided that they'd had enough. Yeah. I don't think we stayed out that long that day. Right. I think we came on back around 11.
Didn't he used to do the Blessing of the Fleet or something like
that?
He did.
That's how he's best known for. And at that and the boat named Sportsman, he was really well known for his boat, the Sportsman. But
he was not a builder though, was he?
Yeah, he did it all.
Was he really?
I mean, they did it in the true. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure, but most of the captains back, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they were, they had a hand in what their boat looked like. They may not lay down the keel, but they were in the boat barn and they were in the shop and they were helping, to a degree. I'm pretty sure he had something to do with the Sportsman being built. But I tell you one thing, you can read that book Carolina Flair by Jim and Neil Connolly, the Connolly family, and it's a coffee table book, and it's called Carolina Flair, and it really lays it all out there. It's very interesting if you're into that sort of thing. Carolina Flair describes the bow and the way the sides of the bow come up to knock down the waves, the V shape of the Carolina boats, they're collectively known as. But yes, Omi. So that day we were out there, and him and his mate, man, they just worked the clockwork, and very little was said in between them. Sometimes you go out with people fishing, and they're like yelling at each other the whole time, and very little was said between the two of them. Honestly, Omi was fairly soft-spoken, and it was the best day I ever had as an observer out at sea, and felt very thankful that I got to go. And I did actually go to his house one time and talk to him, and man, he had these two cats in it. Their bellies were huge. He said something about tuna and dolphin, a lot of tuna and dolphin.
So, fed him the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
He was a very interesting man, and I felt very fortunate to get to meet him those couple times. So.
And he lived down in Wanchese?
Yeah. I think he was a little brick rancher, I'm pretty sure. And, with his wife there and the cats. But he was very knowledgeable, Another interesting boat guy I met was Vernon Davis. He was one of the guys that built these speedboats that used to race around Ice Plain Island, which is now Roanoke Island Festival Park. And he's kind of was a very interesting man. Our friend Sean and I built a little sharp-pointed boat down at the Creek Boat Shop, and he would come by. He lived near there, and he would come by and give us tips and about how to build this boat and stuff. He was a very interesting man. And, I've met a lot of characters. You were asking about my time at the newspapers. I mean, this place has just changed so much. So I got out of Old Dominion in '87, bartended up there for the summer, but I came right down Labor Day. I got the job as a darkroom technician at the Outer Banks Current newspaper. And, I met one interesting person after another. I got to go to a lot of ribbon cuttings and openings of everything from the Chamber of Commerce building to the hospital to, to Kitty Hawk Town Hall. Was around when they moved Kill Devil Hills admin building from the oceanfront to where it's located now.
Oceanfront?
Yeah, that house came from the oceanfront. Yeah, it was Diane St. Clair Baum had made that huge chunk of property there available to the town, either at a reduced price or free or something, and it was all for municipal use. And the schools ended up going there, First Light, elementary, middle, and high school, and the town hall.
It's just amazing, and what seems like a relatively short period of time, it went from concrete streets to box stores. We got Lowe's and Home Depot and some of these other franchises. Some of it for the better, some of it maybe not so much.
Yeah, some of the character is definitely left, and some of the characters have definitely left. And, even my neighborhood now, we were talking about Soundside earlier, the road used to end there. That was the northwest corner of this development I keep referring to of Avalon. And through that stretch, the road had never been paved. So, having just a two-wheel drive truck, we would sometimes, have a couple beers and we want to leave that way. We would peel out and take the truck up the sandy road and hope that you made it, and it was just always kind of fun. And I ended up moving to, up that way towards Hammond, is where I reside now. And but that's since been paved, and now it has a walking trail, and it has a public dock. And,
very sanitary.
Yeah. But I mean, I try really hard to look at the bright side, and the town paid for a place for me to walk and exercise, and that stuff is not cheap either. Those walking trails are very costly, and the Visitors Bureau kicked in on that. They've done a lot to change this place. They've done a lot.
It's been good. I'm not downplaying it at all. By the way, my second child was born on the side of the road because we couldn't get up to Virginia fast enough. We didn't have a hospital back then to give birth to anybody. And I know we're kind of backtracking a little bit, but tell me about the one finger wave.
The one finger wave. Oh boy, that's a great one. So when I first got down here, I was hanging out with this guy, Craig Saunders, and I was his carpenter's helper, and he was teaching me how to be a helper, and he did also take me surfing a handful of times, and he had a nice, fairly new light blue Ford truck, and we'd be driving. There was a lot of driving back and forth to get materials into the job site, and he lived in Collington, and I would go back there with him from time to time. And one thing he always did that I thought was unusual, that I'd never owned a car, and living in Charlottesville, I always either borrowed my dad's car or rode with someone else.
Right.
But one thing that Craig did that was unusual, we'd be going down the road, and he would have both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, and he would raise up one of his fingers, his pointer finger, like on his left hand, when we were passing somebody coming oncoming traffic. So if another truck was coming at us, you just raise your finger up like an inch and back down. And I finally said, "What? Are you waving to that guy?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's a one finger wave." So that was interesting. We were talking about, it was fairly sleepy here. Like we used to joke, even in the late '80s, we used to joke about, when the season was over, you just roll out the tumbleweeds and stuff, and the bars would start closing down, and it was a different animal than it is now. But another thing that happened that same year that I ended up leaving the one organization at the end of December and starting off with Joe Finn the beginning of January of '82. And I'll never forget one morning we were heading north on the beach road in Kitty Hawk, and cruising down the road, and not much going on. It's kind of a dark, gloomy, Outer Banks winter day, and there's another truck approaching, and they're heading south, and we're in another lane heading north, and Joe starts slowing down, and we're in the middle of the road, and he stops, and he rolls his window down. Another guy stops, rolls his window down, and they started talking and drinking their coffee, and they're all talking about helping each other get some handrail work or some siding work and stuff. And given how people are today down here, where everything's rush, push, back then, it's really not that long ago, in the winter of '82, you wanted to stop and talk to somebody face to face in the middle of the beach road, and nobody was behind you beeping their horn, and there was no hurry, there was no push. And it was just a different animal. The Carpenters, they didn't have big jacked up 4-wheel drives with the big metal toolboxes and the big tires and 4-wheel drive and everything. We had simple. A lot of them, had rusted out already, and a lot of guys would just take that off and have a wooden flatbed is what you drove around. And, you had to be somewhat of a mechanic to keep it all going. You were going to carry water with you to dump in your radiator, especially if you were going to Corova with 2-wheel drive. Right. It was a tough thing.
You had to be resourceful.
You did. And, the Outer Banks people that have lived here forever, they are resourceful, and they depend on themselves. Having all these auto shops down here now, and it's just changed, the box stores, and it used to be you went to Guards or you went to Gray's department store to get your stuff, and now we have everything. So
well, let me throw a curveball at you.
Yeah, sure.
You step in your time machine. I'm sending you back to 1985.
Okay.
Where are you going to go? You're hungry. Where are you going to go in 1985?
Oh, gosh, that is a good one.
No budget.
Okay. That would be Awful Authors at the bar. You drink draft beer and get the clams. They were the cheapest thing on the menu. You get a whole big tray of clams for $4 or $5, $6. And the beer was also inexpensive. My buddy Sean Yacovi and I used to go up there after having a good surf session or something. We'd go up there and eat and drink on very little money. Boy, you're stumping me a little bit. I mean, today.
When I said no budget, I meant you could do whatever.
Oh, when I could.
You had no budget.
Big.
Sorry.
Oh, go big. Oh, well, it would be Owens for sure. I mean, good God, love that place, Owens.
Which is still open.
Yes, they are. I hadn't been in a while. I'd like to get there. Today we like Tortugas a lot. Really into Tortugas, and got a lot of fresh and healthy foods.
Unfortunately, there's a pandemic right now, so we don't get to eat out as much as we'd like.
No, we don't. And I guess Awful Authors was really my go-to spot in that time period.
It's still a classic spot.
Yeah.
And probably I'd recommend people to go there in the off season more so than in season, because you're probably going to wait around for a couple hours to get inside in the summertime, but it's still got that classic look to it inside and out.
Yes, it does.
Well, I tell you what, Daryl, you got me all hungry. Let's go get something to eat.
All right, let's do it, man.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I hope you enjoyed these stories. I think the Outer Banks is a special place, and sharing it with other people who love the Outer Banks is a real privilege for me. If you have a specific topic you'd like to hear or a specific person, please leave a note in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Remember, if you want to find treasure on the Outer Banks, just talk to a local.